our today's session. Today we have verses 16, 17, and 18 of the chapter 14 of the Bhagwad Gita lined up. I'll start with verse number 16. Karmana sukritasyahu satvikam nirmalam phalam rajastu phalam dukham ajnanam tamsaha phalam. So the verse translates to, the fruit of good action, they say, is sattvic or pure or stainless. The fruit of rajas is sorrow. The fruit of tamas, ignorance. So let's take this up word by word. Karmana. So karma is action. Karmana becomes of action. Sukritasya, of good. Ahu, it's said or they say. Satvikam or satvik. Nirmalam is stainless, pure, without a spot. Phalam is, of course, fruit. Rajasaha is of rajas. Tu verily, phalam, fruit is dukham, sorrow. Agyanam is ignorance. Tamsaha of tamas, phalam is fruit. So the fruit of good action, they say, is sattvic, pure, stainless. The fruit of rajas is sorrow. The fruit of tamas, ignorance. So let's chant it together. Karmana sukritasyahu
सात्विकं निर्मलं
phalam rajasu phalam dukham ajnanam tamasa
फलम्.
So in this verse, the Lord Krishna is summarizing what we have been covering in the previous verses. And he is presenting before us the fruits of the gunas. Okay. Or what is the consequence of the three gunas that is presented before us. Now, the sattvic qualities in us, or the sattvic content, the pure content in us, is definitely a consequence of our noble actions in the past, or the result of the evolution that we achieved in our past. The rajasic qualities are a result of the vasanas or the desires that we were not able to sublimate. And that's why we have taken a body. This body is a direct consequence of the vasanas. So the rajasic qualities, when we pursue them, they will take us out into the world. The rajasic content will lead us to move into the world. In the short run, we will achieve a goal. So I'll become the Wimbledon champion. I'll enter Forbes 500. But in the long run, it will always lead us to mental agitations. And these mental agitations will result in sorrow and suffering in the future. So that is a fact. I mean, so you can look at all people around you, you can look at yourself. And the typical example is that when you earn money, I'm taking it in the monetary frame. So you want money. When you start out in life, you want, after education, you want to earn a lot of money so that you can, buy a lot of goods and amenities. And then you want it to grow. So you invest it, you make it more. So 1 crore, you want it to become 10 crores. That's the aim. Once the 10 crore is made, are you satisfied? No, you want it to be 100 crores. So you work hard to make it 10 times more. Then it becomes, then you want to enter the Forbes Fortune 500 list. And then what happens? Now you are stressed out that you remain there and only improve your ranking. Consequently, you are stressed out, you're agitated, resulting in your high blood pressure and actually not enjoying all that wealth which others are envying you have, right? So these successes of the world are actually to a certain extent, we need them. They're required so that we have a comfortable method or mode of living. But They don't mean much, actually. So this is the Rajasic uh, method of living our life. Okay. Now, when our intellect itself is blocked, we will be ignorant. We will not be able to take right decisions. Our understanding of the situation is faulty. And consequently, we keep making mistakes after mistakes. And we lead a heedless, reckless life. So this is what the verse is saying. However, I thought we will spend some time here to understand that what is it that is producing the action. When we are acting, when I'm talking, you are listening, you are in the session, someone is out there gardening, someone is celebrating. So what is it that is prompting all our actions? And therefore, we go back to the beginning of the Bhagwad Gita. Now, see, in chapter 1, which was the
खाना
yoke,
बना रहा है वो किसके लिए बना रहा है खुद
which
समझ
is
में
the
नहीं
yoke of Arjun's despondency. Now, here is a mighty Kshatriya warrior who is competent and able, but at the 0th hour of the battle for which he's been preparing for 13 long years, he lays down his weapons and he says, I cannot fight. Chapter 2, the Lord Krishna, he gives the entire knowledge of the Supreme. And Krishna also tells us the qualities of the person who is close to reaching that self realization. So the goal is presented before all of us. Of course, Arjun is a medium, and we are the people who are trying to interpret it for our lives. So, chapter 2 sets the goal before us. Chapter 3 onwards, we are actually being taken step by step on that path of the technique of right action, how to act in the spirit of service and sacrifice without ego and egocentric desires, till the time we come to the threshold of dhyan yoga, where we are able to think of that goal, we are able to think of the Lord and sit in meditation on that Lord. And 7 onwards, the various aspects of the same knowledge are being explained to us to make it idiot proof for us, so that all our questions are answered. So all aspects of this philosophy that was covered in chapter 2 are being addressed chapter 7 onwards. The technique, the process was laid out before us in between, from chapter 3 to chapter 6. After that, we are only covering the, uh, you know, it's like looking at the elephant from all angles with our eyes wide open. And that brings to the chronology of action, which we had discussed as far back as chapter 3. So the causal body. So when I just mentioned that we are there because some vasanas remained. So the vasanas actually give rise to those thoughts. So a person who is inclined towards music will have thoughts on music or of music. Similarly, a power seeking person will have thoughts of how to become more powerful, and so on and so forth. So those thoughts arise, which give rise to those desires. So a musically inclined person will think of learning music. A power seeking person will think of becoming a politician, maybe. So those thoughts arise, which gives rise to those desires, and accordingly the action takes place. Now the action itself can be good, bad, or indifferent, right? But we must remember that if we are born, we must act. And that is what was said in chapter 3 onwards, right? The way we act depends upon our desires. It is a result of our vasanas and the consequent thoughts. So naturally, good desires will lead to good actions, and bad desires will lead to bad actions. So whenever we are acting, we must need to evaluate that what is it that is prompting our actions. The body is just performing the action that is being prompted by the mind or the intellect, or a combination. Therefore, we must be very careful of our thoughts. Our thoughts must always be pure, peaceful, serene. And if we are getting agitated, we should check it at the thought stage. You see, that is the most important part. The moment that our thought process is changing, action is a subsequent part of the process, is the next step. If we check it at the thought stage, we will do the right action. So, for example, and the thoughts and of course the actions, related actions, are a combination of the mind and intellect faculties. So I'll give you an example. We are attending this session, right? So one is that I like to attend the session. That is the level of the mind, because the mind is always functioning on likes and dislikes, right? Then the other one is that I'm told to attend this session. Someone has said that attend, so here I am. Whether I like it or not, I should be doing it. That's the intellect. So you go to the school, attend the school because that is what you have to do. So then we are functioning at the level of the intellect. The combination is I like it and I feel that I need to attend it. I like it is mind, and I need to attend is my intellect telling me that yes, it is helping me in my life. So now if we analyze, from where did the mind and the intellect arise? They arose from the causal body or from the vasanas. And at the end of the day, we are all a set of vasanas, and the vasanas are actually dependent on our nature, or they present the texture of our nature before us. And of course, as this chapter has been saying, that all actions are performed by the gunas of nature or the prakriti. Again, I'm repeating that we are talking at the level of matter. Gunas belong to matter. Now, another important aspect is that the vasanas do not manifest themselves. You don't see them physically. You're not able to feel them or sense them by your senses. But the action that takes place is manifest. You can see it happening. So in between the vasana and the action, the link is the thought and desires. So thoughts are the prime mover in this chronology or mechanism of action. Therefore, once again, we must be very careful of what we are thinking. If we have negative thoughts, we should take it out or check it immediately. Secondly, as long as the vasanas exist, the related thoughts will occur, which will have to be sublimated. So that vasana has to be fulfilled. It's like saying that I want to become a billionaire. So I will act, that thought or that vasana of becoming a billionaire has to be fulfilled. Now, in the process, if I, harbor the thought of becoming a multi-billionaire, then so be it. Then I'll have to finish that billionaire bit and go towards the multi-billionaire bit. So the cycle of action will continue. So thoughts are like the seeds sown, and action is the harvest that we gather. So weeds will grow weeds, mango seeds will grow mangoes. This is a complete no-brainer, right? When we see it happening, and if someone is standing under the mango tree and expecting a jackfruit to appear on the branch, you say, what's wrong with you? Have you lost it? This is a mango tree, it'll give you only mangoes. So we see it when it's happening outside. But when it happens to us, we don't see this. We don't realize that bad thoughts that we have will give rise to bad actions, and bad actions will naturally result in bad consequences. That's the eternal law, the law of karma. Interestingly, we all want happiness and not suffering. So consequently, following this logic that is being presented, we should do only those actions from which peace and joy arise. So our actions should be sattvic or pure or beneficent and selfless. And consequently, the action will be in the spirit of service and sacrifice. And then the fruit that we will accrue will be peace and joy. That is the fruit of sattva, which is what the verse is saying. And also it is important to note that the fruit for sattva is mentioned as stainless, which is, that means stainless, this word has been coming again and again. It means that it does not stick to us, it does not taint us. What does it mean? It means that the desire with which we pursued that particular course of action is sublimated. It is not given rise to more desires or vasanas. And the verse that we just recapped, which was verse number 14, it mentioned that sattvic vasanas, when they are predominant, we are taken to spotless worlds. So again, those worlds where we are not tainted, we move to the higher worlds. And symptoms of rajas that we just discussed in verse number 12 is greed, activity, doership, restlessness, longing, etc. So those are the characteristics of a rajasic person. All these will result in mental agitation because of unfulfilled desires and anxiety for more and more gains. So see, when we have a desire, we work towards it. So either the desire is met, and what happens then? It's not that we are satisfied. While we are working for that desire, we have generated more desires. So we are prompted to more and more activity. The second thing that can happen is that the desire is not met. That leads to anger and agitation. So either which ways, whether the desire is met or not met, the end result is going to be sorrow and suffering. Coming to the tamasic guna, which we just recapped, verse number 13, Lord Krishna says that it leads to dullness, inertia, heedlessness, and delusion. These are the qualities of a tamasic person, or these are the consequences of tamas. So a tamasic person is dull, procrastinating, not completely irresponsible, fairly incompetent, lacks enthusiasm. This we had done when you can go through the recording of the previous session. We had covered this in detail. All this leads to a tamasic person miscalculating the world. And the person miscalculates his or her own ability and in what the situation is being presented in front of the person. And is heedless. I mean, so firstly takes wrong decisions and acts in ignorance. Ignorance means also that the person is not aware of the self, the Brahman within us, the God principle. That person is ignorant, does not know that God principle and works just in delusion. So the natural consequence is ignorance. So this is what this verse presented before us. Let's move on to verse number 17. सत्त्वात् संजायते ज्ञानं रजसो लोभ एव च प्रमादमोहो तमसो भवतो ज्ञानमेव च. So the verse translates to, from sattva arises knowledge, from rajas greed, from tamas arises heedlessness and delusion, and also ignorance. So let's take this up word by word. Satyavat. So sattva is sattva, and sattvat becomes from sattva. Sanjayati arises, jnanam is knowledge, rajasaha from rajas, lobh, lalach, greed, ev, verily, cha, and pramad, moha. Pramad is, when you are heedless in things, and moh is delusion, mohini, or moh is what is not there. Okay. So pramad moha becomes heedlessness and delusion. Tamasaha from tamas, bhavata arise, agyanam is ignorance, Eve also, cha, and. So the verse translates, from sattva arises knowledge, from rajas greed, From tamas arises heedlessness and delusion and also ignorance. So let's chant it together. Satvat sanjayate jnanam rajaso lobha eva cha pramada moha tamso bhavato ajnanameva cha. So now see, this is a natural corollary of the previous verse. Till the 16th verse, the Lord has explained the origin, nature, and expression of the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. And in this verse, Krishna is summarizing the effects of the three gunas. And simply put, sattva gives rise to knowledge, rajas to greed, and tamas to ignorance. So in our kind of an environment where we are always seeking profits out of anything or gains out of anything, so let me put it in a very in a profit and loss kind of a statement, that knowledge is the gain or profit when our mind is sattvic. Greed is what we get when the mind is rajasic, and delusion or misapprehension is what we get when our mind is tamasic. So let's just touch this upon this in some detail. So a sattvic one person has done what? He's removed, or he's in the process of removing whatever sattva and whatever rajas and tamas that that person has. That content, he's converting it to sattva. Consequently, he's becoming more and more established in sattva. Sattva, as we have been told, gives rise to wisdom, which means that our intellect starts becoming sharp. It is sharp enough to know or to determine the right course of action, even in tricky circumstances. So we are prompted to take wise decisions. And once the thought is correct or the decision is wise, consequently, the action is wise. Right? This is what we just did in the discussion of the uh, while discussing the previous verse, that thought is the prompter for actions. So once the thought is correct or the decision is right, the action will be correct. In a sattvic person, further, the desire for sense gratification starts getting pacified, and it is replaced with a feeling of happiness and contentment with whatever you have, whatever the person has. So the what you seek in the world is really not of consequence. Your intellect is focusing on what is the correct path. And interestingly, not only to spirituality, this applies to all sciences, arts, mathematics, politics, music, etc. as well. In fact, even to the mundane household problems. So at times you feel, oh my God, what a chaos we have at home today. And if you start converting that agitation which you're feeling and calm down, come ascend to the state of sattva, peace, serenity, you will come to the right solution. You will get a solution to the problem. In that state of agitation, you cannot get it. So this fact that sattva gives rise to wisdom applies to all situation, and of course to spirituality. In spirituality, the person knows the goal, which the Lord had explained to us in chapter 2, and he pursues on his path. He is not deterred or he's not distracted by whatever comes along the way. So you come across, let's say, gold sale or sale at a jewelry shop. Now that we have the Navaratras and all starting shortly, immediately, we'll forget things and we will head towards buying jewelry. You buy, there's no problem, but come back to where you ought to be. So the person who is in that sattvic mode will continue on his or her path of self-realization and does not rest till the time he has become one with the self. Rajas, we know, inflames the senses. We are totally involved in the world, fields of activity, and how it continuously makes us act. And as we increase our desires, we are forced to make act some more. So we are acting feverishly. And what are we doing? We are adding to our baggage of vasanas and desires. We continue to add more and more desires, which will result in more and more action, unnecessary action. So we will do more fervent activity. The mind of a Rajasic person is out there in the world. It is not there within himself or herself. So there are really not very consistent thoughts of Brahman. And mission in life is outside in the world. The tamasic person, on the other hand, has his intellect shrouded. And when the intellect is shrouded, you become heedless, you become reckless, you will drive on the wrong side of the road. All those things that you see, they are typical examples of tamasic existence. One will be careless and indifferent in life. So that was verse number 17. Let's move on to verse number 18. ऊधरवं गच्छन्ति सत्त्वस्थाः मध्ये तिष्ठन्ति राजसा जघन्या गुणवृत्तिस्थाः अधो गच्छन्ति तामसाः. So the verse translates to, those established in sattva go upwards, the rajasic remain in the middle, and the tamasic, following the lowest gun, go downwards. Let's take this up word by word. Udharvam is upward. Gachanti, go. Satvastha is sattva and sthit union combination. So satvastha becomes established in sattva. Madhya, in the middle. Tishtanti, remain. Rajasa, those established in promoting Rajasic guna. Jaganya gun vrittastha. So Jaganya is the lowest, the worst. Gun is, of course, the guna. Vrittastha, following that course. So Jaganya gun vrittastha becomes following the course of the lowest guna. Adha is downwards. Gachanti, go. Tamasa is the tamasic person. So those established in sattva go upwards, the rajasic remain in the middle, and the tamasic, following the lowest gun, go downwards. So let's chant it together. Udharavam gachanti sattvastha madhe tishtanti rajasa jaganya gunvritistha adho gachanti tamasaha. So now this verse is presenting before us the direction of movement based on the gunas that we are promoting within ourselves. These consequences were actually also covered in verses 14 and 15 of this chapter. And the previous verse also told us what is the effect of each of the gunas. So sattva gives rise to knowledge. A sattvic person reduces his rajas and tamas and converts it to sattva, becoming more established in sattva. And he goes the full journey. He does not get distracted and leave before he has attained his goal, which is that of self-realization. So he attains that state of supreme bliss or self-realization. So he moves up the evolutionary spiral. I guess we have to think of this movement that when you are on earth or on one plane, if you are moving on that plane, you remain there. There is no upward and downward movement. Okay. So the Rajasic person is actually on the paper. So if this is a piece of paper, he remains on the paper or in the world. The Sattvic person starts moving upward towards self-realization. And a tamasic person moves below that plane of existence, okay, into the nether worlds or whatever. So that is how you, so we are talking of movement upward and downward from where we are. So from this plane, we are either going up, remaining there, or going down. So a sattvic person moves up the evolutionary spiral. Now the rajasic person, what I found very apt was, for those of you who read Alice in Wonderland, the Queen's statement to Alice, when they're discussing their worlds. So the Queen says that here, it takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place. Okay, that's exactly what is happening to a Rajasic person. They act feverishly, but because they are not sublimating their desires, they remain where they are. They remain at the same place. They remain in the middle, madhya, as the verse is saying. How? Because while trying to fulfill one desire, they are giving rise actually not only to one, but many more desires. So actually, they have to run harder. So while fulfilling a desire, they give rise to more desires. Now, these have to be exhausted. So, as I just mentioned, the baggage of desires keeps increasing. And most of us are in this state of rajas, that we will fulfill one desire and we have already added two more. Then we fulfill two, we will add four more, and so on, if not exponentially multiplying it, doubling it. So what happens? The moment more desires arise, we have to fulfill those desires. That's again the law of one of the eternal laws. You have to exhaust them. So we continue with the cycle of birth and death because we have limited time in this life. After that, we have to give up the body. In any case, as our senses become more and more feeble, we will not be able to enjoy a lot of desires that we have accrued. So we have to take a newer body, more flexible and agile body, so that we continue to enjoy with our experiences. So we continue with this cycle of birth and death, or what our scriptures say, punarapi jananam, punarapi marnam. That means you are born again and again, and you die again and again. This cycle does not stop for us. So what happens? We are on that piece of paper, on that same plane. It's just that we are moving in circles, birth and death, but we are at the same level in Rajas. So that is what the verse is saying, that you remain where you are. You're not moving to the next level. Tamasic persons, they support the lowest guna. And because their intellect is not functional, they lead a reckless, careless, and indifferent life. And verse number 15 had cautioned, you may recollect, which we just recapped also, that when we discard a body in high levels of predominant, with tamas predominant, one is born into the lower, into the wombs of the senseless. That's what the verse said, which means that we are born into lower states of living. And actually, we can go down the evolutionary ladder and be born into a lower species if our actions are so horrible and abominable. So, this is the movement down the spiral. Also, please remember, most of us think that this is a punishment. No, it's not a punishment. It is what we have chosen. If I choose to be sattvic, I will get the consequences which follow sattvic thoughts or sattvic content. If I choose to be rajasic, that is what will come my way. If I choose to be tamasic, it is this is what will happen to me. What we have been reading in this chapter specifically. So I am choosing it. God is not imposing it on me. He is enabling me to choose. And if my intellect is sharp enough, I will choose rightly. If my intellect is shrouded or compromised, I will choose wrongly. So, some of us joyfully go to a spiritual session or an ashram, others joyfully go to a shopping mall, and yet others go to the pub. it is our choice. God is not pushing us anywhere, and nor is it our destiny. It is our choice. So we are choosing what vasanas to have. And also, we must remember that all paths are open to us at all times. So, even from a very high sattvic content, if we are not careful, we can easily come down. We can start moving towards rajas and tamas. And many examples are there in front of us from the stories and the scriptures that we read. So, you can go from whichever state to whichever state. It's all open and it all depends upon us. And we should not become complacent at any state. So even in sattva, till the time we have attained self-realization, we not remain constant. We should not stagnate. We should continue to move. So the soul can climb upward in its spiral evolution, remain at the same level, or slide down based upon the intensity and frequency of the gunas that it adopts. So with that, we will close today.